and welcome to the WealthTech Insider. I'm today's host, Peter Warren. Great to be with you. Really special episode today. So I'm really proud to have one of Finura's clients on the podcast today. So I'd like to welcome Corey Wastle from Verse Wealth. Corey is really well known, I'm sure, to many of our listeners in the industry, and certainly not his first rodeo on a podcast, I'm told. But what's different about today's episode is that Corey and his team have been working with our Finura consulting team for many months now. So this will be a slightly different episode because we'll be talking a little bit more about some of that work and how it's going. But what I really want to focus on today is what we've really found in our relationship with Verse is that they've actually really found a different way of running an advice business. And I think it's a story well worth telling. So Corey, welcome to the podcast.
Pete, thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite and the nice little pump up to get. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. So as I said, a lot of people know you in the industry already, but we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast who maybe don't know you and don't know the Verse story. So I like hearing how people got into the industry, actually, first of all. So how did you end up in this industry?
I mean, I kind of fell in like so many different people did. My fall into advice story goes as follows. So I didn't do finance at uni. I did marketing and PR. I thought I would land some kind of marketing, PR, advertising role, ideally in sport. However, over the course of my time at uni, and even before that back in high school, I was always interested in personal finance. I was always a hard worker. I was always a saver. I was always keen to kind of set myself up early in my life financially, just through hard work saving. And then by the time I got to 17, I was investing in, blue chip shares in Australia. And I think even maybe a year or two after that, I had a margin loan.
Right.
And this was just pre GFC. So my margin loan, like from memory, I was geared about as much as you could possibly gear, like maximum ratio of 66.6%.
Yep.
If the market fell by 3%, I was going to have a margin call. Turns out we had the GFC. I don't know how many margin calls I had over that maybe 12, 18 months. I would have had at least 10 margin calls.
Yeah.
My first house deposit, let's call it 50, 60, 70K, I lost through that period of time.
Wow.
Having said that, there was no despair for me at the time. Like I did view it to a degree as a learning opportunity. I kept investing through that period of time, kept working hard, kept saving, and that portfolio ended up recovering, at least to a degree. It gets battered pretty hard on the back of 10 margin calls.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to speed up the story, I had this interest in investing and become a real passion and hobby of mine. And I had a family friend who was a financial advisor. And I used to talk with him about investing in markets during those years. And as I was getting to the end of my uni, I was explaining to him that I actually had this kind of like very early stage business plan to go into high schools and teach year 11s and 12s about personal finance. Not so much about like, here is how a budget works and here is how you invest in the share market, elements of that, but more so around just decision making and the implications of making different choices with your money in your life, just to try and help people develop a good money mindset. And he said to me at the time, he said, "Hey, have you ever considered being a financial advisor? I think you would love it. I think you'd perhaps be quite good at it." And it dawned on me in that moment that I'd never actually considered it, which was kind of ironic. Here I am, like so into investing and reaching to others, and I've got this business plan to go and educate people on money. So he was good enough to invite me to spend a few days with him in his office as a financial advisor. I did that, and on the back of that, I decided to do a DFP and get into the financial advice. So I took some time off work. I spent 4 weeks at Deakin University, which was my then girlfriend, now wife, her university. And I was in there for 12 hours a day, basically 7 days a week for 4 weeks, and did the whole DFP. And then I got a role as what was called a servicing financial planner at the Commonwealth Bank in early 2011.
Yep.
And that's kind of how I fell in, Pete.
There you go. Yeah, no, I mean, no one ever really wakes up and says they want to do it. I don't know any kids that want to be financial advisors when they're kids. But I love that story that you felt a bit of pain. You've actually endured a bit of personal investment hardship because it's probably scared you off marginal lending for certain clients. It's never going to be appropriate for. But mate, I was the same as you. I actually was burnt pretty badly myself. I was an overconfident investor in that period, and had those Macquarie margin calls. Fortunately, I had the cash to chip in. I know plenty that didn't have to sell at the wrong time. I still remember having a margin call in CBA shares, and I think CBA shares were about $13 at the time or something like that. I was like, I can't
Sounds
sell
about
these
right.
things. Yeah. So if you were good enough to hang on, it was a good decision. But yeah.
Well done to you, Warnie, for some cash. So risk management has never been my strong suit
Yeah.
back then. So it's something I have improved over time, I must say.
And I guess for you, so you're at the CBA in a job. At what point did you decide I want to go out my own? Because stepping out to going from a nice, secure salary job and actually going to start a business is a whole different kettle of fish. So what was the driver behind that?
That all happened really quickly. So I got the servicing financial planner role in 2011, which is essentially like a combination of being in client services and an associate advisor supporting another advisor. And I was in that role for 12 months. Then I stepped into the financial planner role. I was in the retail branch network. I was looking after a few CBA branches in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. And I would say within 12 months, I'd already kind of, to a degree, internally made the decision that I want to go out and start my own firm. And that wasn't because I wanted to run my own business or I wanted to build up my own client base. It was because when I started in financial advice, based on my experiences at the time, I felt like advice was really broken in a lot of ways. It was like we were at the coalface of all of the institutional scandals that were coming out then. CBA was kind of the front runner
Yeah.
with those scandals. And there were a lot of things that I really enjoyed about my time at CBA, and I built some lifelong friendships, but they weren't doing advice the right way, broadly speaking. And they wanted to be part of the change. I wanted to help change what it meant to be an advisor, what it meant to get advice. I felt within myself that I'd found the right career. I was energized by it. I was excited by it. I felt like I could make a real difference to people. I felt like if I got good at it, I could make money out of it as well and help set myself and future family up. And that was the motivation behind leaving CBA in the 3.5 years in,
Mm.
was to go and start a firm and figure out how do we turn this meat and potatoes financial planning experience that isn't overly personalized, its value is limited, it's quite conflicted, it's not well trusted by consumers. How do we turn that into something that is far more personal and far more impactful and for the right person at the right time, perhaps really transformative in their life? Because advice at its best can absolutely be that. So the motivation was let's figure that out. Let's kind of go on that. Let's go on that journey to make advice as valuable as we possibly can. Once we kind of figure that out, then let's figure out how do we actually grow this, scale it, and build ideally, a national, well-respected brand in advice that is part of that change.
And you started Verse with a blank sheet of paper, so you just opened up the doors. Is that how it started?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And I think it's still the case, but maybe it's a bit of a lesser degree now. We started from scratch, so we didn't go and buy a client book. I hadn't been at the bank long enough to really benefit from building up a client book
Yeah.
and long-term relationships. And one thing, myself and my co-founder James at the time were saying was we didn't want to inherit the traditions of advice. That
Yeah.
was something we said over and over to each other. We wanted to start with what we called a blank canvas, and that meant not onboarding clients that have had long-term advice experiences and really starting with our vision in mind. So yeah, I think I'm.
It's so courageous though, because I think so many advice businesses, when you actually unpack where they started from, they always did start from maybe someone who started at a bank but had those really established relationships, and it was just quite easy to, frankly, set up down the road and put a few ads in the local newspaper, and away they went. And look, good on them, because that I think that's actually been the genesis of some really wonderful businesses growing. But to sort of start something with a blank sheet of paper, and you're so right. I mean, Finura had a sort of a similar origin story in the sense that my business partner and I, Aaron, we had a chance to buy our old business, sort of acquire it, and we just couldn't work out a way to do it in the way that was going to work for us. But when we look back at it, we're really glad we got that blank sheet of paper, because a few people have said to me, you'll probably never get this chance again to start something completely fresh and no legacy. Yeah. So enjoy it. Even though it's gonna suck for a little while, it's gonna be hard. Enjoy it, because you'll look back and you'll probably miss those days potentially.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, and you'll be glad you took the long road. But we certainly took the long road. I think because of the road that we took, starting with no clients and starting with not much money either. Not like we had VC money lining our pockets.
Yeah,
we started off the smell of an oily rag, really. It certainly made the first 2-3 years much more intense and harder than it otherwise would have been. Not just on myself and my co-founder, but on our partners, and we both had our first child.
Yeah.
In the second year of our business, and so that put added pressure on as well. Oh yeah, we found out we were having our first child, who's Brady, and at the time I wasn't even drawing a wage from the business. The business was making barely any money, not enough to even pay me, even a couple of grand a month. And my partner, Christy, is a primary school teacher, and they're not renowned for making great salaries. That was all we had at that point in time. And then we found out we were pregnant. We're going to lose that one wage we had. So hopefully that makes a good chapter in a book one day. That period of time. But I'm glad we did take the road that we took.
Now we're a way further down the road, and Verse has become quite a sizable business. So can you just talk to listeners through what does Verse look like today?
Yeah. Well, in terms of size, we've got 29, 30 in our team. That is across Melbourne, Brisbane, and the Philippines. Of that team, we've got 7 advisors. We've got a bunch of associates supporting them. We've got a growing and evolving leadership team as well. So that's kind of like the size. The clients that we're predominantly serving largely fall into 2 camps: high income professionals, typically 35 to 55, making really good money. Probably top 3-4% household income generally. So ambitious, working hard, want their money working for them, got good free cash flow. And then we have a lot of the more traditional financial planning clients, the pre-retirees. They're 55 plus. One of their main motivations in reaching out is I want to plan for retirement. I want to know I can. I want to make sure I'm going to be okay. And that can be a bit of a centerpiece to the planning that they get. And then outside of that, we've got some entrepreneurs and high net worth clients and the like, but they tend not to be the ones that we market to. So we've had 5 really good years of growth. We've grown our revenue on average by 45% a year for 5 years. That's all been organic. We've never bought a client, and we've built a client experience over the journey built on 3 things: values, intentions, financial well-being. So in terms of how we do advice differently, I think there's a number of different elements to that, but at its core, our client experience is built around those 3 pillars. Again, values, intentions, financial well-being. So your values are what's important to you in your life. It might be family, freedom, security, community, adventure. And we capture those values and what they mean for people and how well they're happening or not happening in their life. So they can be a reference point for the clients to make important decisions, particularly when it comes to trade-offs or important junctures in their life. Then we get their intention. So most advisors will call these goals. For us, an intention is something you intend to do or achieve. Not everything is a goal. Not everything is that rigid or requires that level of commitment, I guess. So intentions are things like, we want to travel, we want to have more kids, we want to retire, we want to sell the business, we want to do those types of things. And that's more so what we plan and strategize around and model out. And we spend more time talking about intentions than values. Values are more used situationally over one's life. And then we track and measure how people feel about their financial life, which is, we call financial well-being. We've built a 27-question quiz. We built this probably 5 years ago now. Takes 4 minutes on average. You do it on your smartphone, and it gives you an overall score for, I guess, your level of confidence and clarity across your financial life. But it breaks that down into 6 different areas, and it gives the advisors this really nuanced insight into not just what someone has, but how they feel and how they feel differently, perhaps to their partner. So their conversations can be richer, but you can also be a coach as well as a strategist to the client, because you can have a financial plan. I use that word really loosely and hesitantly. You can have a plan, you can have an advisor, but it doesn't mean you feel the way you want to feel. It doesn't mean you've got as much confidence as you want. It doesn't mean you're aligned with your spouse. So one of the questions in that quiz, Pete, is how aligned to my partner do I feel with my finances? And they've got maybe 5 or 6 different responses they can choose from. And one partner might say, pretty aligned, and another spouse might say, not aligned at all. So imagine, the advisor's in there with the partners and says, "Hey, Susie, you've said you don't feel aligned at all with David around the finances. Tell me a bit about that." And these conversations help the clients. You facilitate these; they help them get to the heart of the real pain points in their finances and get people on the journey to.
I love you to tell that story. I've even told my personal financial advisor, or I should say my family's financial advisor, that message that when we have our reviews, and my world is quite fluid, Corey, so my goals change regularly, and so does the finances a little bit too, where my wife's like you, she was the rock through the whole period of starting Finura. But even she said to me once, this is the only safe space we really have to talk about our money, because a lot of the time it's quite it's sort of that acute money conversation about, what are we doing this month, and what are we spending on Christmas, and where are we going on holidays. It's not the longer term, bigger picture stuff. And Catherine will often say to me, you never want to talk about it. And so, well, I don't want to talk about it at 11:30 at night in bed when you're up at night thinking about it. I'm just trying to get to sleep, not thinking about the business. And so with our advisor, I've said to him, this actually, can we create more space in the meeting for those conversations? And do you have to be a marriage counsellor? Because we're all good. It's just that I need her to have the space to ask all those big questions as well. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, well said. And those meetings enable really proactive conversations, as opposed to conversations being reactionary and they're coming up in the bedroom at 11 o'clock because someone is feeling frustrated or annoyed or unheard. So
yeah.
My wife, Krista, and I have our own financial advisor, Adverse, by the way. Shout out to Ellie Fordham. For all the same reasons, Pete, and it's made a big difference to us the last couple of years.
Yeah, I love it. I love hearing advisors having other advisors, because I don't think advisors are necessarily great with their own money sometimes. It's like the plumber's leaky pipes. But equally, I say to even some family friends that I think having a financial advisor is actually part of the divorce protection strategy, because I think so many marriages actually unravel. Money is a big cause of it. And it's because the conversations don't happen. They get kicked down the road. And I've sort of said to a couple of advisors, I reckon you would be preventing some divorces from happening potentially by creating that space for people. So I love that you do it. I guess one of the things I'm interested in, Corey, you mentioned Ellie there, and you've attracted some really 7 high quality advisors to your business. But the way your philosophies and DNA are really entrenched in Verse, like you can really tell. How have you found it sort of trying to bring advisors into that model where they potentially come from other worlds, where more traditional cookie cutter, or in the square sort of box has been delivered?
Yeah, being really diligent with hiring, cliched, but that's the first step. Advice businesses traditionally have been built on silos. Someone comes in and this is how they kind of think about advice, and these are the conversations they like to have, and they're more investment focused and they're more cash flow focused, and this person does a 3-meeting onboarding process and this person does one. I remember reading The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. Have you read that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, love it.
I had this recommended to me by Sam Henderson, actually, back in the day, very early in my career, when I let him know I'd like to start a business. And one of the quotes from that book was something along the lines of, "No great business is unpredictable." And that one line really stuck with me. And it's something I believe to be true. And I think if you think about the businesses that we all engage with day to day, like the great businesses they're pretty damn predictable in terms of the deliverables. And that was kind of how we thought about Verse from day one. Like, we want to have one client experience, the Verse client experience, and everyone follows that client experience. So from the get-go, we were really methodical, and we probably over-engineered in a lot of ways how methodical we needed to be. But we sought to create a repeatable advice process and meeting process and repeatable conversations that still had enough air of flexibility and autonomy for people to be themselves and make their own meetings their own version of their own art within parameters. So when we are back to the hiring, when we're sitting down with a potential advisor and we're meeting them all the time, we meet lots, hire very few. One of the things that we do is when we're telling them about Verse and our client experience, and I might be sitting there with the laptop and I'm talking them through what values-based advice is and what intentions are and how we capture them and what financial well-being is and some of the other elements of how we think about advice and do advice. And if they're not lighting up with real energy and enthusiasm, then it's automatically a no. If I go on that spiel and I finish and they kind of nod and say, yeah, that sounds good, well then it's all over.
Yeah, got it.
We want people to respond with some version of, oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
I've never seen advice done like that before. I love it. Like, that's the kind of advisor I want to be. They're the kind of conversations I wish I was having with clients. This is fantastic. Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that we're looking for. And then, of course, when someone comes on board, you've got to train them to deliver the Verse client experience. So that means spending a lot of time with other advisors, going to lots of meetings. Every meeting's recorded, so they can watch any meeting. Having some rigidity in the meetings in terms of the sequence of the conversations and the like. All of that works together to create the consistency without it feeling formulaic from a client point of view and also from an advisor point of view.
It's such a hard thing to nail, and I think I think you've struck a real great balance there, probably through trial and error, I'm sure, knowing when you've gone too far and when to bring it back, and you're still dealing with professionals, independent professionals. But I would say too often I've sort of observed advice businesses who, whilst they're under the same roof and they might wear the same logos, that ultimately they're actually just a bunch of individual businesses that share some office space. Because we get into the weeds of how they operate and you go, geez, it's just all over the place. And so, quite frankly, no amount of tech will solve a business with those challenges. You're almost just got to accept that that's the model you've got. And so I think for you that, everyone talks about scale. It's a bit of I think it's a misused term, but that's actually where you get some scale and leverage, where you can actually give clients an experience about which advisor they see they're going to get a certain delivery model. And then ideally that makes it easier for people like us to help you guys deliver that from a tech perspective, because that's just one part of the equation. The humans are the most important part as well. So I guess, steering, this is a tech podcast, Corey, so I think it'd be good to talk about tech. So, hearing all of that, I think people listening would say, gee, well, the traditional sort of software solutions don't necessarily cater to those needs that you would have as a business. So a lot of software is about product research and modeling and generation of SOAs and all those sort of things. And compliance-driven software is probably what we live in. So, you've obviously, had you've had a bit of experience using different technology. Can you just talk us through your journey and what's worked, what's not worked with technology, and how have you sort of managed that balance between getting tech that's quite easy to implement, but equally you've got a really unique way of using it?
I can. So first things first, I guess maybe just sharing a bit about how we kind of think about the role of tech, because tech, like, it goes pretty hand in hand with shiny object syndrome. There's so many new exciting things coming out left, right, and center. It's easy to be drawn to those things. But, and I've heard you talk about this in your own words, which are probably more eloquent than mine, but like, the tech is a means to an end rather than the end itself. That from our point of view, the tech needs to either improve the client experience or improve our operations, or both. So if we're going to be, we're not out there looking for tech, the process is to identify the problems, client experience problems, operational problems, business problems, or opportunities. And then you try and work out, well, what's the solution to those problems? And often that solution will involve technology, not always, but often. And then you've got to work out, okay, well, if technology needs to be part of this solution, like, how do we work out like what technology? Some of the things that we have always kept in mind when we've made those tech decisions is we've always focused on simplicity when it comes to the user experience. We haven't wanted to put anything in front of a client that isn't just follow your nose. And this is why we have shied away from so many of the traditional tools and CRMs that won't name names, that have been used. We want our oldest client to not have to feel confused by any bit of tech we put in front of them. So really simple, easy to use technology that's also beautiful to look at.
Mm.
We've always defaulted to that. We have shied away from or been really cautious of trying to find tech or being drawn to tech that does it all, the all-in-one type sell. I haven't seen anything that ticks that box.
Me either.
Aspect of advice tech. And then as well, our tech stack has grown so much over time. And even though it's grown so much over time, at the same time, we've been really cautious about it growing too. We've tried not to add to our tech stack if we don't have to. We've always looked at a problem and gone, okay, well, this tech here seems like it might solve that, but do we need it? Can we figure this out with the tech that we already have? Because as you just add more systems and more tools, you just have this rising level of complexity that builds up anyway. And it has at birth over these, 5+ years of growth. You just have more tech, more clients, more tools, more services, more people, more systems, lack of uniformity, and it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts. This complexity just builds up almost like quietly in the background over time. That's kind of a bit about how we think about it. I guess some of the most notable stories along our tech journey. I know you're across some of these, so I'll make sure I touch on the obvious ones. When we started 15, the tech we had was three things, basically. We had a whiteboard, which is probably not even tech. We had a little handheld recorder to record the audio from all the client meetings, so we could listen back and write things verbatim in our client agreements.
I see you'd sort of dictate it back to the right, like Dennis Denudo from the castle when he's pretty
much. And we had a Canon camera on a tripod. I still remember driving down, I think it was Elizabeth Street in the Melbourne CBD, and waiting in the 2-minute parking for James to run into JB Hi-Fi and buy this camera and buy this tripod. We used to record videos for clients, but we didn't have Loom then. We had to get the old school camera out and then take the battery pack or whatever out and connect it to the computer and download that video, and that took half an hour to download and save it to Vimeo and then send it to the client and all these things. So we had very little tech to start with. We did begin leaning into tech as early and as quickly as we could, basically to make things simpler and easier for us and for clients. Along that journey, I think it was probably around 2020. You can tell me whether it was earlier or later. But we ran into Michael Rouse and Creative Mass, who were building a CRM built on Salesforce Financial Services Cloud. And we were really drawn to the vision they had for the product. We're on one of the more traditional advice CRMs at the time that we didn't love. We felt it was more compliance driven than client experience driven. And ultimately, some people listening to this will be familiar with the Creative Mass Wealth Connect story and journey. Some might not be, but we were sold the dream with what that CRM would become really quickly. But ultimately, we probably bought a lemon, and we've had this CRM for the 4 or 5 years since that has had very little iteration and evolution. And it hasn't been a burning fire for us because we've been able to operate and grow even with that CRM. And I know others have a more disastrous, Creative Mass story, but we just haven't made the operational progress centered around the CRM in these recent years that we would have loved to have made as a consequence of not getting that decision right. So there's a few things there, Pete.
Yeah,
happy to dig into any part of any of that.
Yeah, I think, for those to join the dots, for those that may not be aware of that particular story, Creative Mass was effectively a application developer for Salesforce. They'd built a configured version of Salesforce, which was designed to be basically the holy grail replacement for traditional advice tools. And to Corey's defense, your defense, mate, they did a really good job presenting a minimum viable product that looked pretty compelling, and I can see why you were drawn to it, because actually they nailed a lot of the client visual sort of elements of the process. And to be fair, it's built on top of Salesforce. So it's the most widely used CRM in the world. So a lot of boxes were ticked there, right, from a capability point of view. But as we've seen, time and time again, it doesn't really matter which technology you're working with. It's the way it's executed, implemented, and configured that ultimately drives the outcome. And sometimes some of the mistakes people make that they try to rebuild traditional software like an Xplan or a Midwinter into something like Salesforce. And something was never really designed to do in the same way. And it's a bit like sort of a square peg in a round hole. It can actually make a great product really bad if you do that. And so you never know till you've been through it, I guess. But even just going back a few steps to the things you described, whiteboard, meeting transcription, and video. So they are still probably three really important pieces of the puzzle with tech. And, you should have gone to tech, Corey, because three of the biggest, companies in the world acquired in the last recent years. Loom was acquired by Atlassian. Figma IPO'd recently for a stupid number, knocked back 40 billion from Adobe. So they effectively whiteboards. And the video sort of side of it, the transcription Copilot, spawned a massive industry of AI note taking as well. So you were ahead of your time, Corey, in terms of the core needs you've done. I still think nothing replaces a whiteboard personally. Something about a whiteboard you can't replace.
I'm with whiteboards and physical books. May they never leave the face of the earth. Just getting a whiteboard all to yourself for an hour to work through things, present things, like formulate ideas, bounce off people. The collaboration that can come with a couple of people within each other's physical presence and a whiteboard is very different to jumping on a team session together.
Yeah, it's funny, I haven't told this story much, but when we were doing our deal with Hub24, which is now public, there was a lot of PowerPoint happening behind the scenes with some other people involved. But when it came to actually talking to the CEO and CFO of Hub, I was pretty much on the whiteboard with them the whole time. So I actually we put our laptops away. I said, hey, can I just talk you through where we're headed? And it was all whiteboard, and kind of got the deal done. So there you go.
If my team were listening into this, and probably some of them will at some point, boomer is the first thing they're going to say when they hear you say that. Hey,
yeah, right. Okay.
What a boomer.
But I think, I think that tech journey, I mean, you sort of hear everything you've said there. And I would like to link a bit back to your marketing background, because, we'd met a few times before we engaged more formally. We'd sat on a couple of panels together and sort of spoken. And that was always a bit that was different about you, Corey. Like, I think you were so clear from the start with us, even working with us, that these were the non-negotiable, really important things to you around the client experience. But you didn't just say it as a motherhood statement. It's actually like through the business, you can tell, and brand and all those things. That, mate, believe it or not, that's quite rare. So there are certain people in the world that are wired a certain way. And I'm one of them, where if I look at a PowerPoint slide or a website, if it looks shit, I would rather them blow it up and delete it than send it to a client. And I think you're wired the same way a little bit.
Yeah. That's even more so. I would strap a lot of time.
Probably more. Yeah. So, and it really annoys the hell out of some of my team, who I think are colorblind sometimes and things like that. And actually, Aaron, my business partner, is the same way. He's maniacal about how things look and feel. But that must make it so hard for you to buy tech in this industry, which is pretty much designed by engineers who are colorblind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why we have, almost all of the tech we use is like non-advice tech.
Yeah.
I'm just racking my brain now to think of like, what traditional advice tech do we use? Maybe product replacement tech.
Yeah.
Product research, I should say.
Bit of modeling.
That's about it. I mean, our modeling is done on Voyant, which is advice tech, but it's not. It's simple. It's got a beautiful user experience. It's dynamic. It's the things that we were just talking about that we've been for.
And look, you've got some in-house, tech experience. You've had people in your business and know what they're doing. You've got even your general manager, Eddie, you hired, is ex from Iris, and you did well to pick him up, I can tell you. But there was still a point where you obviously felt, we got to reach out to someone and have a chat about tech who sort of has some experience. So what was the trigger for you to pick up the phone to me and say, hey, we need to have a talk about what we're doing? What were you grappling with, or you thought, I need to talk to Finura?
So reaching out to you, Pete, was on the back of an offsite our leadership team had in May. And that offsite went for a couple of days. And the purpose of it really was to get really clear around what the business goals were for the next couple of years and what the strategic priorities in the business were. I mentioned earlier that we've been on a really good growth trajectory for a while now. But that 5 years of growth comes with growing pains, it comes with rising complexity, and it's our intent to continue to grow, but we want to grow smartly, not just quickly. And we really feel like we need to better operationalize the business to be able to continue to grow it at a good growth rate into the future, but protect all the client experiences and also protect the team, and not just create an unsustainable workload. Because if we don't protect the team and protect the client experiences, what we're ultimately doing in the long run is self-sabotaging the business, and pulling at the threads that have made the business what it is over time. So in terms of those strategic priorities and better operationalizing the business, we had to really start thinking about, okay, well, how do we make it a more efficient business? How do we get the clients through the process with less friction and faster? And how do we deliver these services with less effort from team? And what we settled on was, as the first port of call, we need to get our data and tech right. Right's probably not even the right word because no one ever gets it right. Like improve it substantially. And, I say data and tech. So to break that out, from a data point of view, we have data, like a lot of firms, in so many different places. And it's just not clean. It's not organized. It's not centralized. And what that does is that creates a whole range of cascading issues, operational challenges, manual work, frustrations, errors, all these types of things, which then create other cascading issues, like people going, oh, well, I don't have faith in that system, so I'm going to create my own Band-Aid solution, my own workaround. And they've got a spreadsheet here, and this other person has a spreadsheet and a PowerPoint. And now you're adding more complexity and less uniformity. So we've got to clean, organize, and centralize the data. And we feel like once we get the data in that spot, then a lot of things get quite a bit easier. Once the data is organized, then we need to reassess our tech stack, starting with the CRM, and then all the tools that sit in our kind of tech ecosystem and hopefully connect with the CRM and with the other tools. And like a lot of firms, our tools, tech tools, they're kind of like a patchwork quilt in a lot of ways. They're more of a patchwork quilt than they are a cohesive ecosystem. And that's because we've kind of like added things over time when we felt like we've needed them. It hasn't been part of one coherent kind of plan or strategy. There's probably been a lot of blind spots in the decision making. We have opted for simplicity and user experience and things that are beautifully designed, but maybe that comes with a lack of integration and other things as well. So we need to reassess the CRM, reassess the tech stack we've got, and go, do we keep this? Do we get rid of it? Do we replace it? And as an extension of getting the data and tech right, then we feel like, well, actually now we're in a spot where we can really amplify our use of AI and really leverage the power of AI. If we don't have the data in the right spot and organized, then we kind of can't. We're limited. But if we get that right, we can leverage AI. And you're aware that we've also got this vision to build our own software to help us deliver the client experience, in particular what we call the journey experience, which is the ongoing advice program. And we've coined the term for the industry. Maybe this is where I'm letting the industry know. We've coined the term CXM. So not CRM, CXM, Client Experience Manager, which is a digital place for the advisors and clients to collaborate in and outside of meetings. It is designed to help bring someone's financial life to life outside of the meetings, because they spend 99.9% of their time outside of your meetings, not in them. And it's also designed to help us communicate and evidence the value and the impact of advice, which makes a lot of business sense for a whole range of reasons and makes advisor life a lot easier. So, you've seen us go through the journey of building a prototype there, and we've had plenty of guidance from your team around how to go about that and whether we should in the first place. When I first mentioned to you that we're thinking about building our own software, the first thought that went through your head, I think, was don't. but turns out you've come around.
It wasn't don't. I mean, I kind of knew. I felt that was coming. Is probably what I would say, knowing you. And I suppose one of the wonderful things about what's happened in the tech world the last couple of years is we now have, tools, vibe coding apps, and things that can help people like you who are really visual bring your idea to life. And I'd much rather you show me what you want than actually try and describe it, right? And you've actually you probably went down the rabbit hole that I do and built some. You built something really cool that you went, this is what I want. But I think the challenge like everyone is, I'm really, business owner to business owner. I'm sort of like, mate, we got to be really sure we can execute well on this, and I want to keep you safe and all those things. So it wasn't a no. It was just we've got to do some work for you to earn the right to execute on that well. That was probably the important part, and I guess that's probably why we were really careful with that. But I have to say, we were so up for the challenge for working with you guys because of that vision that you had and the clarity around that side. I think a lot of people go into developing their own software because they just decide, oh, no one's good enough. It's all too hard. We'll build our own. It's better. And by and large, they are actually epic failures because they're not actually sure on what they want in the first place. But they're often things that I'd say are behind the scenes. We've seen people try to build custom CRMs and custom things that frankly the client would never see. And the thing that I love about your vision is this is so central to your client's world with you that and we often get the question, oh, does Finura just recommend the same technology all the time? I mean, I hope you find working with us that's not how we are. Like we know what works and what doesn't work, but we knew from the outset that a off the shelf client portal delivery manager was never going to meet your needs. Like it was never in the conversation, albeit we use them as a reference point as to what it probably needs to look like from a capability point of view.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of what I've appreciated in working with Simon and your team through this process is you guys are really thoughtful and you don't suffer from that shiny object syndrome. And when we came to you, we had a lot of clarity, I think, around like what are the operational and client experience challenges we're trying to solve across the business. So we were more looking for the solutions, but also the judgment decisions. So we didn't come to you and say, we're going to build this software.
No.
We said, hey, we need to have our own CXM. Some people might call it a client portal. I think it's something a little different to the traditional client portal. This is what we have in mind. This is a vision of it. Here's a prototype. This is what it looks like. Would love your feedback. Do you think we should do this? Ultimately, I think you've said some version of yes, but eyes wide open. And, we haven't got into the building of that yet. That'll come further down the track as part of this tech plan we're working on together. But you guys have been a really important sounding board.
Yeah, I think, and you were very clear. Like I mean, we still remember the term "throw rocks at it," and I've heard those sort of ideas before from other business we work with. But then when you do throw a rock, they don't like it. Yeah. You were pretty happy to. I mean, I can tell you have plenty of people around you that throw rocks at you all the time, Corey. So
that's basically my existence these days. I pretty much just live. I don't know if people can see it, but I pretty much live like this with team and wife throwing rocks at me. Very, very.
But Simon and the team, like we did spend a lot of time getting to know your team, just directly, even without you sort of involved, and got their pain points documented and took them through a journey. And you took a real step back and actually let our team run that process and uncover some of the things that I think you knew were there all along. But it just allowed, I hope it just felt that your team feel heard, that, hey, we're going to work on this really cool stuff, but we're actually going to try and solve some really urgent operational things that will set you up for success really well. And I think you talk that word intentional. I think all of the tech decisions we're hoping to help you make are intentional around that longer term objective, around building that great CXM. Things are in service of that, but equally not at the expense of the smooth running of the business day to day. And so that's probably where a business like yours maybe conceptually could have gone further afield with its CRM strategy, for example, but we're probably going to try and stick pretty close to where you are and just tweak quite a few things, but to create the space to do the CXM really, really well. Yeah.
I think that's really fair. And I think the role that you're playing for us in some ways is like a set of bumper bars. And I used to use this analogy as an advisor with clients and say, hey, in part, I'm going to be a set of bumper bars for you. So when you go bowling, if you don't have bumpers and you roll a gutter ball, it really has a significant negative effect on your score, like an outsized negative effect on your score. But when you have bumpers, it doesn't guarantee that you're just going to be hitting strikes all the time. It just means that you're going to be consistently making good to pretty good decisions, getting good to pretty good results. You're not going to go down the natural alleyways that people gravitate to and the mistakes people make, whether that's an advice firm with tech or just a client, an everyday person with their finances.
Yeah.
As the advisor looking at the client, you can see those mistakes really, really clearly. Where the dark alleyways are. You know how to avoid them, but people are out there making well-intentioned financial decisions all the time, but shooting themselves in the foot unknowingly. And often, at the time when they make the decision, they don't know that they're optimistic and hopeful, but it takes time to work out. Oh, hang on, this is not actually getting me the results that I thought it was going to, or this hasn't solved this problem. In hindsight, maybe we didn't quite get that right. So, it's almost like we're talking advice about the value of advice. This is what it's been for me in working with you and Simon and Danny and the Finura team is just helping us know what the mistakes could be. You've seen what's worked, what hasn't, the vendors, what's possible, how we can kind of bring it together in a versified way. You kind of know how to sequence it. Like you said before, it would be easy for us to be drawn to the wrong things and get the sequencing wrong, as opposed to solving the most painful problems in the business at a point in time.
And probably what's realistic too in a set time frame. That's the other thing too. Like we're all running small businesses. It's bloody hard to, you are literally rebuilding the plane as it's still going down the runway, the old expression. But I think too, even when it comes to implementing tech, I mean, we're also dependent. We bring in other partners, and we, if we're doing a project with Microsoft or at Salesforce, we'll often go and help find vendors. And we had an experience the other day where vendors put a pretty aggressive proposal in front of you guys to do some work, and we've actually said, hang on a sec, we reckon we should look at some other options here before we go down this path. Where other advice companies have sort of been on processes where they're so far into a sales process, they sort of don't know how to get out of it. Where we're that sort of third umpire to go, we're doing this, and we're saying we're going to look at another plan here because as we can't, we don't actually think that's a good use of versus money right now for that. And so, but unless you've sort of got that experience to create that buffer. So that's part of the value. I think it's really hard to articulate, right, what that's worth to someone, but you probably only know if you've actually made the mistake. It's the reality.
Exactly. No. And there's that old quote of, if you think getting advice from a professional is expensive, you should try getting it from an amateur. Kind of like that, to get a great financial advisor in your life, but it's far more expensive to make poor decisions yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that when you're thinking about, if you're an advice firm trying to, operationalize your business and deliver a better experience more consistently, with less friction for the team and the clients. You're going to need advice, because advice firms aren't built with a whole range of tech people. And they're normally advice people, and that would limit the quality of decision making and then execution. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah. And I think I'm keen to talk to you, I guess from your perspective as a business owner, because there's other business owners listening. I mean, you are spending money on tech, you're spending money with us, you're investing for the future. And that, I have to say, that's not something our industry does terribly well. We see so many businesses. We have this term at Finura, we call it gold taps, and it's only because there's a client we worked with at one point who was squabbling over a few $100s a month fee that a software vendor was charging or something, but they just put in these gold-plated zip taps that had the bubbles coming out of the water, which I know cost about $10,000 each. And the reception looked like the Qantas Club, and I was just like, guys, it just wasn't congruent with that, and so I found that a really challenging relationship, just being upfront about that. But you're obviously different. You're prepared to put your money where your mouth is to make the right call for the business, but that's not normal, because a lot of advice firms would be much more comfortable saying, "Hey, Pete, I just want to go and buy a few books of business and deal with a known." So, what's your mental model around that? Because you're sort of saying, I'm going to make sort of almost capital investments in the future. Is that because you just back versus ability to attract great advisors and great clients? Is that sort of your thinking, that it's actually cheaper to just build an organic business than acquire it?
To a degree. I mean, at least from my perspective, I feel like organic growth is the best kind of growth. Like, it's the ultimate show of strength for a business. And if the business can't grow organically because it delivers something the market really wants, then is it really a great business? because we're not just trying to build the biggest business we can. We're trying to build a business that is both great and big. But if we much prefer to take great over big if we had to have the choice. So we don't spend a lot of time looking at what others are doing or trying to figure that out. We keep a bit of an eye on things. We're not completely blind to it, but and I've got a few close friends that run other firms we really respect, and we bounce off each other quite regularly with things and support each other. But we're just trying to deliver the best client experiences we possibly can, and that's a journey for us. Where we're running into problem after problem and trying to solve these problems as quickly and as well as we can. And I just don't see us growing into the business we want to be, and helping as many people as we think we can without really investing really heavily in technology. And I have, like, to that point, I have a quote that something that Clayton Daniel said to me in a meeting a year or two ago. Clayton, who's the founder CEO of Ensemble, and he said, "Corey, whether they know it or not, every business is now a tech business." Yeah, and what he meant there was, like, tech IT historically has been like this kind of like function in a business, like this back office type support type role, as opposed to being like a core function or like the beating heart of the business in a lot of ways. We are increasingly moving into marketplaces where the competitive advantages the businesses have aren't just built on like their product or how well they sell it. It's how well they utilize technology to deliver these things with efficiency and with less friction and better customer service to their customers, to their clients. And that just creates, just a more competitive environment within all marketplaces, essentially. And to compete and to be successful, you have to like your people with great technology. Otherwise, everyone's going to be feeling like they're sinking and failing and feeling overwhelmed. So productivity these days doesn't just come from working hard. It comes from having the right tools and data and tech and systems. And that's not just at a business level. You would know this even better than I, but it's an individual thing as well. An advisor that really builds their knowledge around AI and harnesses AI in their day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute work, they are going to be so much more effective at that role than one that doesn't. Even if they've got similar skill sets from an advisory point of view, the one that doesn't very soon won't be able to compete with the one that does. And that competing might look like, look like promotions, salary increases, bonuses, more time off because they don't have to work as hard, all these types of things. So, that might be a long-winded answer to probably a simple question, Pete.
No, I think
how we think about.
I mean, I feel, so few businesses have a CTO, and that's fine. I don't think you necessarily need a CTO. There's other ways you can sort of think about that. And you've thought about technology in the perfect way that we love to. It's about, either that reference is it uplifting the client experience or the operations, very simple mindset that we use for businesses. But certainly some of the larger companies we work with where we see, and I've had very direct conversations with CEOs about this where, I hear that the technology function's now reporting to the CFO. And I go, okay, well, we may as well just pack our bags and go home because
Did you say to the CFO?
To the CFO, quite common, because there's a cost center, Corey. Oh, well, we've got to manage our costs. And I'm like, well, he can squabble about his Adobe fees and Microsoft fees all he likes, but this is actually, you are in the people, you're in the services business. And so therefore your only two levers are people and experience, the client experience. And so, and in a world where clients are going to be less physically present in our offices, I think, and that's where it's headed, right? And I'm probably in that box of clients you deal with, right, who are pretty time poor. I'm going to engage with you virtually is the reality most of the time. And you better serve up a good digital experience because chances are this idea of liquid expectations, if I've just, if I use my phone every day using all the wonderful apps we have now and our digital experience, and then I've got to engage with your firm, and it's just back to the 80s with tech, and you're charging me $10,000 a year, it just won't feel right.
It just won't land, will it? And that is a difficult pill to swallow for advice firms. Because when it comes to having access to great tech that helps deliver great client experiences, we're not flush with options.
No, I know.
It's highly regulated. There's a lack of investment relative to a lot of other markets that aren't as regulated. And yeah, like from a user experience point of view, we're competing with Chat GPT,
Yeah.
with Claude and Google and Uber and Airbnb and Snapchat and all these other places that deliver these really seamless, engaging, cheap client experiences. So, like coming back to the idea of the CXM, and we had this conversation a few months ago. We're talking about what it needs to be successful, and the client portals historically have been kind of like white elephants to a degree. I think it sounds good, but who's actually using it? Are the clients
Yeah.
actually using it? Are they engaging with it? Are they getting value out of it? Is the team? I think on a lot of occasions, the answer to that is either no or probably not really. So, like when we think about the software that we intend to build, the CXM, good won't be good enough. Very good won't be good enough. It's got to be great. And if it's not great, it just won't serve its purpose because it just won't have the engagement it needs to really elevate the experience in the way that we envision.
I think too that the skill that's not common in our industry is actually it's a software skill. So it's building more a product skill actually. Building products for real consumers to use is a really different skill set to building B2B software. So it's unrealistic to expect a big company like an Iris to build software for a consumer because they don't hire people that build software for consumers. In fact, most of the people that build software for consumers are working for Sportsbet or for the crypto. Yeah, you look at those apps and they're pretty slick. To be fair, they work pretty well. So that's going to be, I think, the real challenge for us working together, Corey, is that sort of layering that, having something that your business can use, but also prototyping with the clients. And we haven't even got into the weeds of that yet, of how we're going to test with clients and all those things. But I think it's going to be, if you're up for it, a good journey to share with some people because what you're building, I think will be really exciting. I would say, though, this is so central to your proposition. I still think there's a lot of businesses where we will recommend they have a client portal for different jobs they've got to do, clients don't adopt it. And I sort of go, well, that client portal can't be in complete isolation of a broader client experience review. You need to sell this to your client. You need other reasons to bring the client in. But you've thought about that. That's the difference. Yeah.
The CXM for us it's so central to the client experience. You can't go through the client experience without being really engaged with the CXM.
Yeah, and your IP.
Can't be in a meeting with your advisor without collaborating in that CXM.
Yeah, and even that financial well-being thing that you get clients to do at different points, I'm sure all these things are going to be surfaced through that portal. So I would imagine if we get this right, your clients hopefully will say, I can't believe you didn't do this sooner. Like we've been, and they probably hope they will say that, and it's great. But I am hopeful that you picked a great time, Corey, because I think, now building this technology is more accessible, easier to do. It's still got to be built in a robust way, but even just to get to that prototyping stage that you did all off your own bat, I have to say, which I think probably took you, a couple of weekends of work to spin those things up?
How long did you take? I probably spent 20 to 25 hours.
Yeah.
There was probably 300 to 350 prompts.
Yeah.
Into it. It really blew my mind, Pete, around what anyone can do, essentially.
Yeah.
At least with the front end, joining all the pipes at the back, as you say, is far more complicated. It requires more expertise.
But it's easier actually with that way because most engineers start the other way from software, and because that is the hard stuff and building it safe and all those things that we've got all those people do that work for us. But at least with like building a house, if the architect's very clear on what it's got to look like and functionally what it's doing, and you as the client can actually get those, visualize what it's going to look like to walk through, which I'm sure all architects are doing now with software. It just gets everyone aligned on what it's going to look like. And you and I are visual people. I remember even our software we were building it, I was being shown all these prototypes and schemas, and I'm like, I don't want to see that. I just want to see the front end. That was me. Because I just thought, well, that's what people are going to buy. I get it.
They're going to make their decision in 5 seconds whether they'll like it or not. I
think so.
The UX of that front end looks like.
Yeah.
Feels like.
Yeah, totally. So, no, I think it's been a great journey to share, mate. And, I think your your attitude to technology is one of the reasons why we started this company, because we want more people like you, because we feel that pressure, I think, will drive software companies to be better. It'll drive, hopefully, the people with the big balance sheets who we know, like platforms and others, to do better. And I hope that we get this right. We build build something where other businesses look and go, wow, why didn't we do that? Why, that it'll become and it'll be yours, and others will probably, copy and imitate. That's okay. That's good for the industry nonetheless. But we have so much work to do on this side as well. Corey, I guess we're recording this for the week to go to Christmas, and we'll probably get this out early in the new year. But over the Christmas break, what are you going to be doing as a business owner to recharge the batteries for a big year ahead?
I'm taking a nice long break. Okay?
Good.
I've got 3 boys, 5 and 8, 2. And last year was the first year I took all of the school holidays off. And I did that because, I could see, my eldest, 7 at the time, growing up so fast. And before I know it, he's going to be a teenager and he won't want to spend summer with us.
Mm.
He'll want to hang out with his mates. So I could kind of see the writing on the wall there. So I committed last year to taking all the school holidays off every summer going forward, provided that I can make that work. And it's my intention to make that work, even if that comes with some compromises on a business front. I know that's something that the 80-year-old version of me won't regret. So I've got 6 weeks off, Pete. I certainly feel like I need it. It's been an intense run up to Christmas, probably more intense than previous years. So we don't have a lot of plans in place yet. However, what we will likely do is do a bunch of regional trips around Victoria. The 5 of us will spend some time with family and friends, get some sun, we'll be at the beach. And I'm keen to take my eldest over to Japan to go skiing together. He and I.
Awesome.
For 7-10 days. I've got to get this organized pretty soon, mind you. But I took Brady and Charlie, my 2 eldest, on their first ski trip in August to Mount Buller. We had 3 nights up there. They got some lessons. We got a day and a half of skiing in. They loved it. They got up and running. They want to go back, which was the whole goal, the subtle goal of the trip from my perspective. So, I'm super excited about Brady and I having that time together.
That's awesome, mate. Yeah, no, I'm the same. My Tommy's 8 as well. Paddy's 6. And yeah, I feel I'm getting more, maybe, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling he's shown a bit of attitude the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh, gee, it's early signs of a teenager. And I'm still his mate and it's all good. But you're right. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 more summers. Even Catherine said to me, gee, this is the last year or 2 that Santa's kind of, a big deal. So yeah, you got to hang on to it, mate. And you're dead right. We'll have probably, we'll do this in 5 years' time, and you and I will have probably summers working on things because our kids don't want to see us anyway. We'll just be in the office.
Yeah, weird, like a shared working space.
Yeah. And mate, we like to do, we love doing predictions at Finura. We do tech predictions, we do things like that. But is there any sort of predictions you're thinking about, or things that you anticipate for 2026 for Verse, the industry, technology? Any predictions you'd like to make?
Good question. I tend to not make a lot of predictions. Well, what I would just say more broadly is not so much a prediction, but I just want to kind of acknowledge and remind everyone that I think we're in the very early stages of a golden age in financial advice. And there are so many reasons to be excited, not just about where advice is, but where it's going. We have professionalized an enormous amount in the 13, 14 years I've been in advice. The quality of the average advisor and the average piece of advice has improved substantially. The business models are better. The client experiences are better. We've got this, and these are things that a lot of people listening probably already know, but we've got this structural shortage of advisors. We've got 15,500 advisors. I don't know how many Aussies we've got over the age of 25, but let's call it 15 million for an aging population, biggest wealth transfer in history, on the precipice. We've got one of the best superannuation systems in the world with about $4 trillion of money that helps underpin, advice. And I think we're on the edge of hopefully a long phase of deregulation. We're at the tail end of a long phase of regulation, which has created increased cost to serve and created capacity challenges and it's put advice firms on hard mode, at least in the 10 years I've been running one. But I feel like we're at the start of a lot of regulatory tailwinds that help foster innovation, bring costs down to serve, bring the cost to deliver, to get advice down as well over time and make it more accessible. And that train doesn't move as fast as I would like it to.
No, me either.
But I really do feel like we are in these early stages of a really exciting period in financial advice where the great firms and the great advisors that really do build great businesses will absolutely thrive.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think there's often so much negativity, and unfortunately, I think the trade press don't help with this because they love a good story about compensation schemes of last resorts and the government and all these other things. But you and Verse are living proof that you can actually run a pretty innovative advice business, even within the current regs, because you're not having to cater to the lowest common denominator when it comes to risk, that you've actually, your business model is not predicated on some of the challenges of the past. And unfortunately, that story doesn't get told enough. I don't think enough politicians actually know about businesses like yours. And I know there's hundreds of businesses like yours out there run by really, really great entrepreneurs who are professionals. So I think generationally, we're going through a transition, and you're one of them who will be, these businesses like yours will be 5 or 6 times the size they are today in the not too distant future. And all of a sudden, we'll look back probably at this point and go, gee, we didn't, we probably over stressed about some things that aren't important anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. And when you're in it, Michael Back said to me once, you can't read the ingredients when you're on the inside of the jar. We're all enmeshed in our day-to-day challenges and frustrations and stresses and overwhelm and all these things. But if we really do take a moment to step back and look at the bigger picture for where we are as a profession, we're in a really good spot and we're on a good trajectory. And there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from where advice goes over the next 10 years.
Yeah, great, mate. Well, that seems like an awesome way to finish. Corey, loved having you on the pod, mate. Always love our conversations, and I hope people listening have enjoyed eavesdropping in our chats as well. There are obviously advisors that may be listening to this who are, looking at their options for the future and wanting to get to know you a bit more. I know you're really generous with your time. How can people get in touch with you, mate? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Hey, so if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please connect. You're welcome to shoot me a DM. If you're interested in the role, shoot me a DM, but you can also email careers at wealth.com.au as well, and you will hear from Heather soon enough.
Yeah, Corey, the team are always hiring. Always lots going on in the business with growth. So not just advisors, but other roles you're looking for. So definitely check that out. And you've got a hint today. If you are interviewing with Corey for an interview for an advice role, show some enthusiasm for their client process. Otherwise, don't bother applying. But I
appreciate you having me on, Pete, and the support that we've got from you and Simon and Danny and the team at Finura has been just first class in the last 3-4 months. So we're appreciative of that, and you yourself have a great break with the fam.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Obviously, all the resources that we mentioned in this episode today we'll put in the show notes. And as always, if you're keen to just get a bit of a quick check on your tech health at the moment, please jump on the Finura Group website, finuragroup.com. You can get a lot of free resources on there as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with another episode very shortly.